our collusion and corruption segment tonight, the deep state is going after President Trump. The reason? Because President Trump refuses to say definitively that Russia interfered in our election, which has drawn backlash from the Beltway elite and attacks from the deep state. Watch.
The American establishment was still in shock due to President Trump's election, and that his deep state enemies want to make the life of this administration miserable as they speak about impeaching him.
The deep state's real. It's a massive bureaucracy of people who believe in liberal big government, and they see Donald Trump as their mortal enemy.
As a former government official, government's going to kill this guy.
And so to urge that the CIA and the intelligence community empower itself to undermine the elected branches of government is insanity. That is a prescription for destroying democracy overnight in the name of saving it.
All right, but here's the thing. President Trump is right when he says that there's a lack of evidence to prove that Russia was behind the DNC hacks. So will anyone actually present that evidence, or will the left keep making unfounded accusations like they've been doing? With me now, global risk analyst John Sitilides. John, good to see you.
Great to be with you, Liz.
All right, John, let me start out this segment by asking you, President Trump, has insinuated that there are career officials, the deep state, that are going after him. They're trying to undermine his presidency. Is he correct?
I would go back to November 9th, 2016, Liz. It's so simple, and it's been documented by two Politico reporters who covered the Hillary Clinton campaign. This entire Russia collusion, quote unquote, idea has been concocted inside the Hillary Clinton campaign the day after election when she refused to concede her own fault, her own responsibility for defeat. And so John Podesta and Robbie Mook, the two top campaign officials for Hillary Clinton, spent 24 hours the day after Election Day concocting a story that James Comey and the Russians were responsible for Trump's victory. It's all documented. It's the laziest thing any reporter who wants to do his or her job can do. Look it up. This is all a fabrication.
Right, so let me get a little deeper here. What part of it is a fabrication? The fact that they're accusing Trump of colluding with Russia without any proof, because various investigations, we don't have any proof of that. Or, did they fabricate the idea that it was Russia that hacked the DNC server or John Podesta's email in the first place?
No, not necessarily, Liz. And it may turn out quite ironic that, in fact, the Russians did attempt to hack both Republican and Democratic National Committee servers in 2015. That we know. They failed to do so. What did happen in 2016, and this is probably another great story that the media has refused to cover, has not chosen, has refused to cover, and that is a possible aid to the DNC chair at that time, Debbie Wasserman Schultz, who may have actually downloaded enormous amounts of data and sold it to the Russians and the Pakistanis. But the Russians themselves were not able, as best as we can determine, to form any type of collusion or relationship with the Trump campaign, despite numerous efforts, which we've seen documented. But collusion to what? We had an electoral college. No one has ever demonstrated what exactly the collusion that has been alleged would have led to. Shifting of votes, affecting voting machines, changing media campaigns and advertising strategies. These are all just words people keep throwing up, figuratively, in order to create this cloud of suspicion around Donald Trump without a shred of evidence anywhere, except for one thing, Liz. The only crime that we know that has happened has been the unmasking of General Michael Flynn when he was National Security Advisor to President Trump and during the campaign transition period. And yet somehow that's the one story that no one is investigating and that no law enforcement agency is pursuing.
Right, just a little suspicious there. But let me go back to this. So we had these emails that the Democrats, Hillary Clinton and her campaign, claim are the reason why she lost the election. The emails that WikiLeaks published the months leading up to the election. The Democratic narrative has been, since these emails were released, that these were hacked by the Russians, that they were given to WikiLeaks. Even leaving their Donald Trump narrative, the collusion narrative, out of it, do we actually have proof that the Russians hacked those emails and gave them to WikiLeaks before WikiLeaks published them?
No. It's as simple as that. The answer is no. And as a matter of fact, the torrent of campaign emails that we saw that were leaked in October of 2016 were not as the result of a Russian hacking. It was a phishing expedition against John Podesta, who mistakenly gave away his password, and somebody was able to go into his email files, suck everything out, and then dump it out onto WikiLeaks and other fora. So there was no Russian hacking there at all. Again, one has to believe that Vladimir Putin believed that electing Donald Trump would be good for Russia. And as anyone can see in terms of policy in Syria, in NATO, in Ukraine, in a robust pro-energy policy by the Trump administration, this has been one of the worst deals that could have been handed to Vladimir Putin. And yet nobody's putting any common sense together in terms of predictions and how the outcome could have possibly favored Russia, even if there were some type of collusion.
Right, and this is just unbelievable to me. It's mind-boggling that this has been ignored so thoroughly, so completely by the mainstream media, that the Democrats put out this talking point. It is nothing more than a talking point. They have no substantiation to it whatsoever. They said after John Podesta, gave away his email password in that phishing attack, that was the work of the Russians. They then had a private company come and do forensic analysis on John Podesta's email and on the DNC server, which was also hacked. This private company, who, by the way, was beholden not to the taxpayers, but to the DNC, who was paying them, the same company who had been wrong before on their analysis of hacking when it came to North Korea hacking Sony. It wasn't North Korea. This company says it was. Or wrong about Russian hacking in the past. Nobody actually said, what is the proof, besides taking this company's word for it?
Well, that's the situation that we're facing, Liz, and it's very unfortunate. Evidence is meaningless when we're talking about this fabricated story. If you repeat the lie often enough, people start to believe it. They just hear it, and unfortunately, there are too many Americans who simply believe what they see, especially on major networks and major media. And I'm afraid that many of the reporters that have a First Amendment right, and I would say responsibility, to cover government properly and objectively, have instead felt very badly about the fact that their preferred candidate, Hillary Clinton, lost. They don't want to accept the blame for the policies that they support having led to that loss. And so they're in on this narrative that somehow it must have been external forces. And who better right now than the Russians that the Democratic Party once loved to be in bed with and now have found a very convenient target, and very unfortunately thwarting the ability of the White House and the Congress to work together to do good things for the country and to advance our national security.
Right. You're absolutely correct. And it's such a disservice to the American people, too, because part of the role of journalists is to hold the government accountable and to create transparency between the government and the American people. And they're not doing that. They're just being a political activism sort of organization. And that's a shame. John, thanks for your analysis. I appreciate it.